Welcome and thank you for joining me. Today we're going to start with a real simple block. It's called a 9-patch. And what that means is there's 9 patches or 9 squares within the 9-patch block. So what I've done already is I've cut all my squares to 4.5 inches. All of the blocks that I will be presenting this year will end up to be a 12-inch finished block. Now what that means, for example, if I wanted this to be a 4-inch finished block, I'm going to cut it 4.5 inches. Why do I do that? The reason why is we're going to take 1/4 of an inch off of the top and bottom, and we're going to take 1/4 of an inch off the left and the right, and that is for our seam allowance. So I have gone ahead and glue basted, just like we did in the previous video when we were setting up our perfect seam allowances. And I am going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain piece these blocks together. I have glue basted 2 blocks from each row. My rows will consist of 3 blocks long, and then we're going to put the 3 rows together, and we'll show you how we end up with a 12.5 inch block, which means it will be 12 inches finished. Okay, we'll make this a little easier to understand as we go along. But right now I am using Superior Threads Masterpiece 50 weight. I do like to use 50 weight in my needle and my bobbin when I am piecing, because of the fact that it doesn't take up quite as much real estate when we flip these seams open. So here's the third set of 4.5 inch squares. And I'm going to take my end charger as well. There it is. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we're going to press these open. So we'll have to readjust the camera, and I'm not going to make you go through all of the movements because it can make one seasick, I think. Okay, hang on, we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. So what I have got here is I've got one of the 3 rows that I have started. I've got my 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up. I want to point this seam to the lighter side of the block. The reason being is we're going to want to stagger our seams so that we can nest them together. It will become a lot more apparent when we put the rows together. So I'm going to just go ahead and do a little finger press here, and then I'm going to set my iron on it. I do have a steam setting, and what you'll notice is I've got a really nice even seam. So this set of blocks is going to go this way. This set of blocks, if I can get them open, will go this way. So I have the seam on this one facing that way. I'm going to want the seam on this one facing in so that we can get a really nice nest of those seams together. So there we go. Just go ahead and set that seam by putting a little press on it. I'm going to finger press it down. Make sure everything is opened up nicely. And again, I'm going to press. Pressing amongst quilters can be sometimes challenging. And the reason I say that is because there's so many quote unquote rules to pressing. Some quilters don't believe in using steam. I do. The reason that the quilters that don't believe in it, and it's a very valid reason, because using steam you can stretch and skew your fabric. If, however, you are very careful and you finger press, I don't think it's much of that, it is that much of an issue, with one exception, if you are stitching on the bias. Now, with the glue based that I'm using, it's going to really keep this fabric stable. That's why I feel as though I can go ahead and use the steam without being overly concerned about the integrity of the fabric as I'm pressing. The other thing you'll notice, I am not moving the iron around. I'm not going like this. Going like that will in fact help to distort your fabric. When you press, you just want to set it down and press. So now what I've got, move this out of the way here, and I'm not sure how much of this you're going to be able to see. I may have to make some adjustments here for you. What I have got is the beginning of my 3 rows. I'm going to go ahead and just lift that up a little bit. This is row 1, row 2, and row 3. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab the other blocks and we're going to attach those. Okay, I've brought my other blocks in and I've got them laid out. And I know you can't see the whole thing, but you can see most of it. When I'm working on a 9 patch, I do like to lay all my blocks out prior to putting them together. This just helps me avoid mistakes in getting the wrong square in the wrong place. The other thing with this particular fabric, it actually has kind of a grain looking print on it. So I wanted all of those to be pointing in one direction. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to go ahead and glue baste my seam again. I think I need to get a refill here. There it comes. And again, you don't need much of this. And as long as I've got it going, I'm going to get this one too. It's not going to dry that fast. This just will make it easier for the filming portion of this. There we go. You can see here, I don't have a lot. It doesn't take a lot. What we're doing is we're just stabilizing everything. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip the bottom square to the middle square to the middle row, and the top square to the top row. Again, I did have these laid out, so I knew I was getting everything in the correct place. And don't forget, one of the most important parts of making sure that our blocks turn out nice is cutting and how we cut. And I'm going to do a video on cutting in the very near future here for you. So now I'm going to take these to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these together and take a look at what our next step is. Okay, we're back at the sewing machine. Going to make just a small adjustment here. There we go. Remember, I had row 1, row 2, and row 3, and that's exactly how I'm going to put them together. I still got my charger on, and here we go. Keeping your index finger here will help you keep that block more stable while you're stitching. There is row 1, and this is going to be row 2. Remember, take your time. It's a journey. A lot of people say, oh, I can't wait to get there. Yeah, it's always nice to get where you're going. But to me, the adventure is in the journey. And here we go. We're doing row 3 now. And we're going to put that charger on at the end. Make sure my needle is down. And now we're going to take these apart. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press these. And what I want to show you here, because it's easier to see here, just going to pull you up a little bit. I have this seam pointing that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point this seam the opposite direction. Okay? So what I will do is I will go ahead and I will just finger press this before I take it to the ironing board. And then I'm going to flatten that out. Now, this is the middle, and this is pressed towards the center. So on this, I will again press towards the center. You're going to see why this is important here shortly. And then we have this with it pressed out. So we're going to go ahead and press this one out. And we're going to set all of these down. I'm going to go ahead and press them and we will be right back. Okay, I am back, and what I have got going on here is I have pressed all of my seams nice and flat. The flatter you are able to press those seams, the more precision you're going to have and the nicer your block would look. Now remember, I told you I was going to show you the importance of making sure that the seams are pressed in opposite directions. And you'll see as I turn these over, they are. These are pointed out, these are pointed out, and these are pointed in. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and turn these back over, because personally I think this is the easiest way to do it. Now, I could go ahead and glue baste, and I would do that, except for the fact that I want you to see a little bit more closely how we're going to put this together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom you in here. Here's our middle row. We are pressed towards the center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that bottom row onto the middle row. What's going to happen here is because we have done such a good job pressing, these two blocks are going to nest together, and what that means is you'll be able to feel where this ridge is and where this ridge is. And as long as they are pressed in opposite directions, which you can see that they are, they're going to just want to go in there perfectly. I like to pin with a really extra fine pin, and I will pin on the seam allowance that I'm coming towards, and I will pin on the seam allowance on the other side. Now, if you are glue basting, you don't have to do this. I am doing it this way simply because I am not glue basting. I'm showing you how I do it regularly. And you'll see, now this is just a little cattywampus, and that's okay. It's allowed to be. It's just the way that it is sitting there. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. There isn't. So there we go. I've got a little bit of fullness on this one. No worries. We're just going to go ahead and even that out a little bit on each side. Now I am going to my next seams, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to nest these seams together. And this is what's going to give us a beautiful transition from one square to the next. Okay, so we're going to put that, and then we're going to put another pin in, and it's going to be on the other side. Oops. And I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in the center. I've got to make sure I'm looking backwards at the camera, so I'm sorry if I'm getting things a little out of. And then I'm coming here, and you can see these two line up perfectly. Yay, team. Going to put a pin in there and one in the center. Again, you do not need to do this if you are going to glue baste. Okay, so now I've got myself pinned. I'm going to back off just a little bit here so you can see everything. I've got everything pinned and ready to go. There we go. And now we're going to put two rows together. Again, I am still using my charger. I'm just going to adjust you. There we go. I prefer not to stitch over pins. That is a personal preference. Some people do, and that's fine. I've never been one to say you have to do it this way simply because I find it works better for me. What works better for me may not work better for you. I'd like you to do what you are comfortable with. Some people don't. They prefer not to go through the extra time to do the glue basting. As you can see, it does take less time to pin than it does to glue baste. I have taken the pin out now that I'm within that seam allowance. And we'll go ahead and take the next one out. Again, I am within that seam allowance. I think I may have just dropped that pin. Okay. And here we go, the next pin. Almost there. Always make sure when you stop your machine that you have your needle down. I do not have a needle up, needle down function on this machine. It's an antique machine. It's a Singer 301 slant needle machine, and I love it for piecing. I also love my featherweight for piecing. Actually, there's not one of my machines I don't like for piecing. Okay, we'll take this last pin out and put the charger in. And then we're going to stop about halfway, or when we get towards the end of our charger. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to trim those chargers off. This is what I want you to see. Because we were able to nest these seams, they come out perfectly. Isn't that cool? And we have got ourselves right now a six block. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to attach the next row, and then I will bring you back here and we'll take a look at the front and the back, okay? Okay, so I have now joined the 3 rows together. Let me see if we can get you out just a little bit here. And in order to determine whether I did really good on my stitching or not, what I did was I went and got a 12-inch square ruler, lining it up, and it lines up beautiful down every side of it. There we go. I've got the diagonal running perfectly along this diagonal line. And what you'll see is the 1/4 inch marks. There we go. The 1/4 inch marks on the seams here. I think this is pretty doggone close. So let's turn it over. And now I'm going to pull you in a little bit, because I want to show you those nesting areas. What you have on the back side is your nesting area is going to look like this if you were to open it. Okay, some quilters prescribe to opening it when you're putting blocks together because you want to reduce the bulk. There's an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is, of course, you are reducing the bulk of the quilt top. However, the disadvantage is that what can happen is that your batting can do what we call beard. And what that means is the batting, and here I've just got a little flaw there. What that means is that the batting can migrate through that open seam. So it's a personal choice. I prefer to keep my seams flat like this, unless there is 8 or 16 points coming together, then it's virtually impossible to keep them flat. So that's just a different animal in and of itself. But this is how the 9-patch block works, and it's just one of many that we're going to explore through the year. So I will leave you with this, and hopefully you will try it. Please post pictures of it. I love to see pictures of what you're doing. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video, and like it. And hit that bell. You'll be notified when I make the next video. So until we meet again, let's quilt.